Racist police officer shaved black trucker's head and then regretted it when he saw him in court. He just wanted to deliver a load, but he was stopped as if he were a criminal. It was around 6:40 in the morning. The sky still carried the orange tones of the sunrise, and the fog clung to the side of the road, as if to prolong the silence of the dawn. The truck's radio softly played an old blues, and the steady hands of Jeremias Freeman, a 47-year-old black man, braided from root to tip, guided a gleaming red Scania with precision along Interstate 95. Jeremias has always been proud of his truck, clean, well cared for, with his mother's name engraved in gold letters on the bodywork, Maria das Estradas. For many, he was just a truck driver, but those who really knew him knew. Behind the wheel, there was a man who carried much more than loads. He carried stories, memories, and the strength of generations that were never heard. He had been traveling the same route for years between Savannah and Charlotte. That would be just another day, until it wasn't. Just after Post 82, a federal highway police barrier caught his attention. Nothing out of the ordinary. He always passed by calmly. But that morning there was something strange. The agents were selectively stopping trucks, and only those with black or Latino drivers. Jeremiah stopped. He rolled down the window calmly. The documents were in order. All right, what came next was unexpected. "Get out of the truck now," said the white policeman. Mirrored glasses, hand already holstered. "Jeremias Franziu Atesta. Any problem, sir? You made a suspicious maneuver near the entrance to the weigh-in. Is there something to hide? I only reduced it because of the hole in the road. It's all recorded on the onboard camera, sir. Come down, hands on the hood." Two police officers approached, one with black gloves, the other with a camera attached to his vest, but turned off. Jeremiah calmly went downstairs. He knew that any quick movement could cost more than the cargo. They started searching the truck as if they were hunting for something. They laughed when they saw the family photos, pasted on the dashboard. One of them pointed out, "Look at that, the Malcolm X of the roads." Jeremiah took a deep breath. A third policeman approached, staring at the thick braids that fell down Jeremiah's shoulders. "And those braids there, do you keep anything in them? Let's take a look at it." "This is invasive and discriminatory. Sir, there is no legal reason for this. You're resisting the search, are you? I'm exercising my right." But no one was listening. The policeman pointed to his hair and laughed. "If there's nothing to hide, you don't mind if we trim it, right?" Jeremiah looked around. 4 vehicles, no one filming, no witnesses. The radio communicated an internal code. Q12 in progress, cleaning on the track. He didn't scream, he did not react. But inside him, something cracked. An invisible thread of dignity was pulled tightly. And as much as his mouth was silent, his eyes said it all. "You messed with the wrong man." The cut did not happen at that time, not yet. But what was planted there, on the side of the road in the presence of boots and guns and muffled laughter, would begin a turning point that no one would ever forget. Because what the agents didn't. Dwayne, it's just that Jeremias Freeman wasn't just a truck driver. He was the man who would write the new law of the road. He begged for respect. They responded with a forced haircut. It was supposed to be just an inspection, but it wasn't. Jeremias knew this the moment he noticed the looks exchanged between the agents, the smiles at the corner of his mouth, the way the body camera of one of the police officers had not yet been turned on. They wanted to do more than do their duty. They wanted to score, intimidate, decrease. One of the agents returned with a tactical knife in his hand. Another carried a pair of pruning shears. Yes, pruning shears, the kind that barely fit in your pocket. Jeremiah took a step back. "This is absurd. My documents are in order, my cargo has been checked. What more do you want?" The tallest, the same one he had mocked minutes before, pointed to his thick braids, lined with pride since his college days. "We want to make sure you're not hiding anything in those ropes there. They are my hair, my story, my right. Right to look like a drug dealer?" A third scoffed, laughing as he adjusted his gloves. "Be quiet, or we'll take you in contempt." Jeremiah was still calm, on the outside. Inside, a scream was already burning, one that he learned to hold from a young age, from the times when they listened more to his skin tone than his voice. But now it was different. "I don't consent to that. You don't have a warrant. They are attacking me for racism," the team leader replied dryly. "You're resisting. That's reason enough." Before he could finish the sentence, Jeremias was pushed against the side of the truck, his face leaning against the bumper sticker that read, "Transportation is respect." Cruel irony. He felt the firm hands gripping his head. And then the sound. The dry tear of a blade cutting the edge of what was his. The first braid fell off, then another, and one more, each one cut with brutality, as if they were tearing away a piece of his soul. Laugh. They recorded it on their personal cell phones. "Now it's presentable," said one. Jeremiah did not cry. He didn't even moan. But what was stamped on his face was something that no video would fully capture. The pain of seeing his identity violated, without handcuffs, but still arrested. On the asphalt floor, the braids lay like uprooted roots. Silent witnesses of an aggression that does not bleed on the outside, but tears on the inside. When it was all over, they threw the wires in a plastic bag, as if they were garbage, and they sent him away with a light slap on the back. "Good riddance, brother." Jeremias climbed back into the truck but did not start the engine. He stood there looking in the rearview mirror, and when he touched the back of his head, he felt his scalp bare, uneven, as if someone had left an exposed battlefield behind his head. And in that instant, he understood. The road would never again be just a road. It would now be a court on the move. And he, the driver of the biggest accusation that system has ever seen. The truck driver was a former constitutional lawyer and owns half of the carrier. The truck's engine finally started, but the man behind the wheel was no longer the same. Jeremiah Freeman drove in silence for nearly 2 hours. The radio soundtrack no longer mattered. His hands on the wheel were steady, but his gaze was different. Distant, deep, sharp as a knife. He arrived at the logistics center at 10:03 a.m. He parked in the reserved courtyard, went down with calm and firm steps. The carrier's colleagues, accustomed to his discretion, waved as always. But something was different. He didn't take off his kipu, he didn't smile. He didn't even answer the good morning. He went straight to the boardroom. Inside, no one treated him like a truck driver. Because there, he was not just a driver. He was a partner. Co-founder of Freeman and Doyle Logistics, one of the largest independent freight forwarding companies in the southeastern U.S. Yes, the man who was called the dealer with pigtails had a degree in constitutional law from Howard University. He was legal counsel to the Committee on Racial Justice in Washington for 5 years, but decided to abandon his suit and position after losing his younger brother, killed in a police stop. Since then, he has returned to the wheel to reconnect with the road and with the people who sustain this country, but he never stopped fighting. He only changed his tactics. Jeremiah sat down at the table. He took out his notebook, opened a file named Systemic Abuse, Operation 12X. There, dozens of pages, videos, and testimonies from other black truck drivers who had suffered similar approaches in that same region, including records that braids, dreadlocks, and black power were often used as justification for aggressive searches. The plan had been in the works for months, but now he had something new, personal proof. He called the company's lawyer. He called a civil rights NGO, and he sent an email to the Baltimore Sentinel's investigative journalist, subject, "You cut my braid. Now cut this lie with me." He knew exactly what to do. And later that afternoon, he filed a federal lawsuit for abuse of authority, institutional racism, and violation of civil rights. The bomb was armed, but what made it all the more impactful? He was the one who was setting it up, because for the police, he was just one more. But what they didn't know is that he was the man who had already overthrown corrupt judges with the force of law, and now he was ready to overthrow an entire system, running his own case. From defendant to legal representative, the truck driver enters the hearing as his own lawyer. On that overcast Monday morning, The Savannah District Court was full. Outside, a few parked cars, local cameras, organized behind bars, and a small group of protesters with handwritten signs. Braiding is not suspicious. Approach is not torture. Inside, the main room pulsated with expectation. The case had gone viral in less than 48 hours, not because of the complaint itself, but because of the photo. A black man sitting on the steps of the courthouse with a crooked scalp, scissors marks showing, and a steely look. Jeremiah Freeman arrived alone. No lawyer, no suit, no disguises. The shabby jeans, the black shirt with his mother's name embroidered on the left chest, and a leather briefcase under his arm. Behind him, his lawyer. It was himself. At the entrance, the security guard hesitated. "You are part of the process?" Jeremiah looked up. "I am the author, and I'm also my own legal representative. Code of Ethics, Section 3, Article 42. Freedom of self-defense. Do you want me to cite Supreme Court precedent as well?" The security guard just shook his head, astonished. When he entered the courtroom, all eyes turned. Some whispered, others widened their eyes. The prosecution knew him. They had already confronted him years ago when he struck down a discriminatory local law against black delivery workers. But the judge frowned. She recognized him, not television, but from the corridors of the University of Law. She was an assistant professor when he, years ago, was the valedictorian of the class. Justice does not begin with the toga. It starts with courage. "Mr. Freeman, do you really want to dispense with legal representation?" "Yes, Your Honor. No voice will translate what they did to my dignity. I myself will speak for myself, and for the other 27 drivers who today gave me authorization to represent them as well." The judge was silent, breathed. "Very well. The court accepts." What happened next was something rare, almost mythical. Jeremiah got up, walked to the front of the room, and opened his briefcase. From inside, he took out a brown envelope with the audio recording of the moment of the approach. Images of the cut, testimonies from other truck drivers, ignored reports, and at the top, a cut of the Constitution itself. He lifted one of the cut braids sealed in a plastic bag. He put it on the table, among the records. "Your Honor, I bring proof, but above that I bring a violated principle. It wasn't just my hair that fell out that morning. It was the illusion that justice is blind, because it is not. She saw my hair, my skin, and he judged before he even heard my name." Absolute silence. The prosecution swallowed. The press began to take notes frantically. The public. He bent forward in his chairs, wanting to hear more, and he continued. "Today I didn't come to seek pity. Came to look for memory. Because if this court doesn't remember what it did to me, he will forget what he can do with the next ones." And with that, Jeremiah sat down. Quiet, with a crooked head, a heart on fire, and dignity on its feet. The court, at that moment, belonged to him. The cameras capture more than words. They capture buried stories. The court had been suspended for an hour, but no one left. The press set up base on the stairs. The air was heavy, and the tension hovered, as if something big was about to happen. The hallways were buzzing with lawyers whispering and prosecutors typing on their cell phones as if the future of the case could be edited before the next session. Jeremiah Freeman, on the other hand, sat quietly, in the front seat, his face slightly illuminated by the soft afternoon light that pierced the stained glass windows of the courthouse. In his hands, a new briefcase, thicker, older. Inside it, the forgotten dossier, secretly recorded meetings, screenshots of internal emails, reports, typed by drivers from a generation before his. Approaches, intimidation, screams, handcuffs, all for random reasons, all of them black, all with curly hair, braid, dread, afro. Most never sued, others were silenced. But one man kept it all, a friend on the road, now deceased, whom Jeremiah had helped years before, and who left him a box with the files saying, "If one day they cut what you are, show them that the root is deeper." Jeremiah stood up when the recess was over. He returned to the center of the room, But this time it carried the history of decades. "Your Honor," he began, "I would like to attach new documents to the records. Previous victim reports, evidence of repeated conduct, and above all," he held up an envelope, "an audio that has never been heard." It was a recording from 11 years earlier, a young newly hired police officer talking to a superior. "Do we have any standards for the approach? Look at the dreads, the braids, the tattoos. These are the ones who cause problems." The audio reverberated in the courtroom like contained thunder. The prosecution froze. The judge closed her eyes for a second. Jeremiah then did the unexpected. He turned his back to the judge's bench and looked directly at the audience. For the cameras, for citizens, and in a firm voice he said, "They cut my hair thinking they could cut my story, but they forgot one detail." He pulled one of the pages of the dossier, a testimony from a driver named Luther Jenkins from 1993. "We always leave copies with our brothers." The court was silent, but the world outside began to scream. Newspapers began to publish headlines. Social networks were boiling with videos of the testimony. The hashtag #ChuckTransaNoItCrime skyrocketed in the trends, and one photo in particular went viral. Jeremiah holding the sealed braid, teary-eyed but head held high. A legenda? They could cut the wires, but they didn't know that each thread was a document. That afternoon, the case ceased to be an individual process. It became a movement, and Jeremiah knew that now he was no longer alone. Drivers from all over the state gather around the courthouse. The horns echo in response. The clock was 4:17 p.m. when a sound broke the silence of the court. Boom, boom. It wasn't an explosion. It was a convoy of trucks. At first, 1 or 2 engines roaring in the side street. Then, 10, 20, 30. In less than 15 minutes, the avenue in front of the Savannah District Court was taken over by cargo trucks with banners tied to the mirrors. "Don't touch our braids. We are drivers, not suspects. Justice for Jeremiah. Justice for all." The noise of the horns became the soundtrack of the resistance. Some carried Union flags. Others came alone, pushed by a force deeper than any court order. The shared pain of invisibility. From the top of the court, the judge asked for silence in the room. But no one heard only what was inside those walls anymore. The sound of the street invaded with the weight of truth. Jeremiah did not smile, but his eyes lit up. One of the officers who had previously ignored him now approached discreetly, whispering, "There are truck drivers coming from 3 neighboring states. They are forming a symbolic barrier around the building." On the main staircase, a black woman, a carrier's uniform, dreadlocks wrapped around her head, climbed with a sign in her hands. They cut one, but we are millions. The movement wasn't just about hair. It was about respect, about dignity, about the right to walk on the roads of one's own country without being treated as an enemy. The journalists rushed to the windows. Live cameras captured scenes reminiscent of historic protests. Children on the shoulders of their parents. Women holding photos of children approached. White drivers arm in arm with black colleagues. Banners that read, "If you drive with the truth, the road will always be yours." In the courtroom, the judge suspended the session for safety. But the real reason, it was another. She knew that court now belonged to the people and Jeremiah. He just stood up, walked to the inner porch and looked. He didn't say a word, he just lifted the sealed braid in the air, and in response, as in a choir rehearsed by collective pain, the horns echoed again, stronger, firmer, more alive. The judge tries to close the case, but it is the system that will be judged. The courthouse had been evacuated for security, but everyone knew what was at stake was no longer just that case. Behind the scenes, federal prosecutors ran. Pages and pages of the dossier delivered by Jeremiah were being read in real time, analyzed. Connected emails, internal memos, leaked audios, and a sequence of signatures, all from authorities who ignored previous complaints, silenced victims, filed cases for lack of evidence. Among these names, One stood out: Judge Dalton Green, currently responsible for the Conduct Commission of the Federal Highway Police in the state. The same man who years ago denied investigating the agent who assaulted a Latino driver, and who was now quietly trying to dismiss Jeremiah's lawsuit for media conflict. But he made a mistake. He underestimated the man with the cut braids. On the morning of the resumption of the session, Jeremiah arrived with a new briefcase. It had no golden cape. It was simple, crumpled cardboard, aged, but inside, there was the key to the implosion. "Your Honor," he said firmly, "I request the inclusion of an addendum to the case, a document signed exactly 6 years ago by this court, denying the opening of an investigation against Agent Harlan Travis, despite 3 formal complaints and video evidence." The judge leafed through the material. His eyes widened when he saw the final signature on the order, Dalton Green. Jeremiah continued, "And this is the internal memo sent to the head of the PRF, asking to keep Travis active in the field, as he is useful in containment with risky profile elements." And what was the risky profile? Black men, with curly hair, of alternative appearance. The judge asked for an immediate recess, but this time, it was the public prosecutor's office itself that knocked on the door. "Your Honor," said the prosecutor, "we have just received a formal complaint from the Department of Justice. An investigation will be opened against Judge Dalton Green and 4 PRF supervisors for continued omission, manipulation of documents, and protection of agents with a history of racial violence." The room shook. The judge looked at Jeremiah. He just nodded as if to say, "We're just getting started." Outside, the crowd reacted to the announcement with tears, screams, and raised fists. And in the midst of the commotion, a reporter asked, "Mr. Freeman, what do you expect to happen now?" He looked at the camera. The crooked head, the braids are missing, but the presence unshakable. "I don't expect it, I demand it, not by me, but for all who were forgotten when the law turned a deaf ear. Today, the judgment is not mine. It is from the system. And this time, he won't escape unscathed." The Freeman Mandate is created, a package of laws that protects truckers from abuse. The next morning dawned differently. The horns had stopped, but the movement was still alive, now in Congress. Jeremiah Freeman sat in a white marble room in Washington, D.C. before senators, representatives, and federal court officials. He did not wear a tie, not even a suit, just a black dress shirt with the scar of the scissors still visible on the side of the scalp, purposely uncovered. In front of him, a briefcase, this time with a name in high relief, Freeman Mandate, Protocol on Protection and Racial Conduct in Road Approaches. He stood before the commission. He looked at every face in the room, and he began. "Gentlemen, when they cut my braids, they said it was for safety, but what I saw was something else. I saw a system that learned to control through fear. That identifies our culture as a threat. Who pretends that randomness is synonymous with justice?" The president of the commission watched him carefully. Jeremiah continued, "I'm not just here as a victim. I am here as a draftsman of a proposal. The Freeman Mandate sets new guidelines for road approaches, based on 3 pillars. Mandatory training in racial awareness for all highway officers. National review of all approaches with the use of beauty in the last 10 years, with a focus on racial profiling. Express prohibition of any contact with hair, props, or cultural expressions during searches, except with a formal warrant." Jeremiah took a deep breath, and he concluded, "I lost my braids, but I didn't lose my voice. And if my pain can protect the next truck driver, so let this pain become law." The plenary was silent for a few seconds, and then, one by one, the members began to clap their hands. It was not the applause of ceremony, it was the applause of respect. Recognition. Impactful. That same day, the proposal received bipartisan support. In less than a week, 18 states announced interest in adopting the protocol, and within a month, Jeremiah Freeman's name was studied in law schools, debated in social justice forums, and replicated on bulletin boards in community centers. But he did not seek fame. Only one thing: reconstruct what they cut. Jeremiah returns to the road, alone in the truck. On the back, hand-painted in white letters, there is no road too long when one drives with truth. The horns sound again, but this time in celebration. You can cut a braid, it can tear a document, it can even try to silence a voice, but you will never be able to erase the root of those who carry history in their blood and truth in their skin. Jeremiah Freeman did not go to court out of revenge. Came in to remind him that there is a limit, and that this limit is called dignity, because the road is long. But when you drive with courage, it always leads to change. If this story made you feel something, then don't go through it as if it were just another video. Mark someone who needs to know that the road of justice is still under construction. Share with those who have been stopped, silenced, discredited, and yet moved on. And he comments here, "I am the root that cannot be cut." Because when the truth directs, the world listens to the engine of transformation.